Ryan Stock, author of Basketball. Buddha was a baller, Mind Sport,
Yeah.
your app. You were a former coach, player. Seems like you had a lot of success. So I'll kind of let you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to, how you started and how you got to where you are now.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, as you mentioned, my name's Ryan Stock. I was a baller. Now I'm the founder of Mind Sport, Sleep Meditation app. Previous to that, I was a college basketball coach for 12 years at the junior college and NCAA level. I played Division II ball for 4 years, and then all the way back to high school and youth sports, playing multiple sports. So I was drinking by myself in the kitchen that day, and I was like, my wife's asleep. All these things happen, and I'm still frustrated, even after a win. That I was like, man, something's got to change, especially now that I'm about to be a father. So I went in and resigned the next day. Had no idea what I was going to do. Obviously, was about to be a father, so my wife at the time wasn't a big fan of that move. But I knew something had to change, and so I got certified. After that, I got out of coaching, got certified in disc behaviors by an Olympic athlete, a guy named Bo Hansen. And all disc behavior assessments are, in case you're not familiar. They teach you essentially how you communicate, how you're motivated, and then they also not only raise your self-awareness, but they help you learn about other people and the fact that we're all different. Coaches communicate differently, that our teammates communicate and behave differently. So did that first, did some leadership training with the John Maxwell team, some executive coaching, and then got into mindfulness and meditation. And now I've weaved all three of those components together: executive coaching, leadership training, understanding behaviors, how we communicate, and then the mindfulness and meditation part, all into what I do now. Mm-hmm. So long-winded answer to your question, but that's the story of Ryan Stock's past and how he got to where he's at right now.
That's all right. I'm the worst question asker in all of the podcast video. I don't even know what this is yet. So, yeah. I saw Mind Sport and I was immediately drawn. I gotten home from Europe. My first pro coaching season just ended. My pro career ended 5 years ago, and I went through a huge transition. And I think a lot of these athletes right now just literally lost their entire season. Pro athletes, pro coaches, high school coaches. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I deal with that mentally? Like this isn't about physical, like my senior year ends and I'm a senior in high school. Do you know how crushed I would be?
Right.
And so one of my questions is also trying to find out like how would you help an athlete that says, hey, how do I process the end of my career? Like I didn't have a say in it. It wasn't my control. What would you say to some of these, I know NBA athletes are a little upper echelon, but there's thousands of athletes going through this.
Yeah, honestly, I think, and I'm glad you brought up the pro component, because I think the answer to that's probably everybody's got to deal with it in their own and probably very different way. Mm-hmm. I do think that pro athletes in particular get a bit of a bad rap because we think that money takes care of a lot of issues, especially mental issues. And you and I both know that that's inaccurate. I work with a lot of pro athletes combining the mindfulness meditation, what we call it Mind Sport mental training, that not only executive coaching and leadership and understanding the disc stuff, but also teaching them meditation, mindfulness, yoga. But even those guys at the highest level, like you and I talked a little bit before we started recording with Dane, I mean, these guys have depression, they have suicidal thoughts, they have anxiety. So at every level, everybody's dealing with this in some form or another. So yeah, I guess what my advice to an athlete would be at any level would be take the time to make sure you're giving yourself that self-love, that attention. Now that you're taking that physical component away, where it was such a release, a stress relief and anxiety release for so many of us, you have to find a release in another way, in another healthy way. And whether that's movement with things like yoga or running or doing stuff in the house, to being able to be comfortable in your own skin and like and do a 2-minute meditation, a 5-minute meditation. You need to first practice that self-awareness, that self-love, and listen to your body, listen to your mind, figure out what it's asking you for, and make sure you're giving that side of you a lot more attention than you used to, and then kind of from there based off of that.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of leads me into Mind Sport. Like I downloaded the app. Can I haven't used it yet. I don't know if I got to pay like $39. I don't know if I have enough money quite yet.
It's free. It's download, so you're good there.
Okay. Yeah. So just walk me through it, like how you designed it, what your kind of vision was for it.
Right. So circling back to that last piece that I went through as I was trying to find, and I still am, but the journey that I was going to go down after I got out, the last piece of the mindfulness meditation, and then eventually even a yoga certification. And that was really, like you and I were just talking about, that was really just being more comfortable in my own skin, not craving or chasing those things that we so often chase, or not being so strongly averse or resistant to all those other things that we face as athletes too. So by craving and aversion, I mean, the aversion side would be we hate losing so much that it drives us. It drives us to these unhealthy habits like drinking, drugs, depression. Right? That's aversion. Most of us hate to lose. But the flip side of that is the craving side, right? So like when you attain some kind of success or you win, it's still good enough. You immediately want to win again, or you have a good performance individually that's not good enough. So that's the craving side of it, right? And that was what I was figuring out. I didn't know how to label it or what to call it at the time when last day I was talking about it as a coach. But like you win by 1, you think you should win by 20. You win by 20, you're not satisfied. You immediately start thinking about the new game or the next game. You're never present. You're never comfortable in your own skin. Back to your original question, the reason I started all this and the reason I went down that path myself was to help athletes and coaches dealing with those struggles have some resources in place that I didn't have, and start talking through some of these emotions, some of these behaviors, so that they have not only an understanding, but then also a resource to help them deal with those emotions, thoughts, feelings that they're having. That is, we have sessions on all these topics like visualization, motivation, positives like that, to some of the negatives like dealing with anxiety, dealing with failure, when you can't sleep at night. We have sleep sets. So we have sessions on just about every topic that you're going to deal with as an athlete or as a coach. Whatever session speaks to you that day, because we all know that our days greatly. And so something may speak to you one day that speaks totally different to you next. We have sessions on whatever you're dealing with at that particular time as an athlete or coach.
Interesting. I mean, the idea of the aversion and the craving, I've never heard it said like that, but as a coach, I was away from basketball for 4 years, and that was a tough transition. I'm sure you talked to a lot of NBA. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Whether you're a college player transitioning to your career outside sports, pro player, getting back into the real world, high school player never playing sports again. I think the transition to life after sports is a lot, is something that most athletes don't like to talk about because they feel really vulnerable. I know I feel vulnerable talking about it. Nobody wants to talk about the lowest point in their life. And,
right.
But I think the suffering that you incur as an athlete, there's a reason why you were successful as an athlete. Maybe it was your habits, your system for development. You were disciplined in ways that maybe other kids weren't. So I also tell athletes, it was hard time, but at the same time, I felt like it was up to me to grow my mindfulness. I had to grow my values. What did I really value? And I think people are climbing that first mountain so fast that once they get to the top of that mountain and they're done and they come back down, you go make money. I got to go do this. Like you said, I'm not going to coach anymore. Like that to me is such a huge, people probably look at me like, well, why did you stop playing? Because I didn't feel like it was healthy for me to play anymore. I had done everything I wanted to do. I had reached the top of my mountain. My body was falling apart. And it's a stressful environment. So looking at my values, saying, okay, I'm going to rebuild my life from a cause, a community, something that brings me real kind of purpose. And that's why I want to do this, talk to people like you, talk to athletes, that are okay with talking about life after sports or what they're dealing with, because every athlete I know, has a real dark period in their life, whether it's Kevin Love, whether it's Boobie Gibson, whether it's me, whether it's you. But, a lot of those guys they carry that weight with them. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not helping me, because I could have used that. Like when I was retiring, I would have liked to known, like, hey, by the way, you have these resources. You have Mind Sport, like all this stuff that I never had. I was like, what? Why doesn't anybody talk about it? And I just went on a huge rant, but.
No. And I've got two things to kind of branch off of that. So the first thing that I loved about what you said, when you talked about what's important to you, what you value, all the things that you said were difficult, but that you ultimately released, those were all like tangible things, like possessions, monetary things, like money, house, cars. Those are the things that you said you understood you need to let go of. And then the things that you said you valued were more non-tangible things like relationships, people. You said your fitness. And so I think that's a great self-awareness on your end, because in reality, even if we buy something, even if we possess, too heavy on you right here, but it's never actually ours. So even if you buy a car, even if you buy a house, you either eventually get rid of it, or when you die, it goes to someone else. But the things that you can have or take with you forever are things like relationships, feelings like love, memories with your family, even your health, so that you're able to go through your life, not extreme discomfort or, jeopardizing the length because you're not healthy. So I think that's a great self-awareness on your part. Important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you work with NBA guys or pro athletes, guys that have maybe started off, talking to my sports psychologist cousin today, a lot of athletes don't look at the mental mindfulness training as a muscle. Like, I need to work, just like we go to the gym. We go to the gym to work out. We work on our skills. Not many athletes look at the mindfulness training, or looking at their negative thoughts, like, well, that's a self-limiting belief. Why do I believe I can't do something after sports? Like, start a company, start an app, and I think, how does Mind Sport, or how did you go talk, working with athletes? Like, what did you see their routines and their practice like, whether it was yoga, or what were some of the things that started working for those guys?
Well, two pieces to that. The first is understanding that it is a practice, right? Like you just said. That's why, as an athlete, it's called practice. That's why it's called a practice, because it takes reps. Be successful in anything in your life, this is the most simplistic, but also the sound answer to anything you want to be good at. It just takes a bunch of reps. Great transition into what the second piece is for me. So it's along those lines. It's understanding, one, what quality is, and then two, again, practicing. You hear me a bunch, but it's practicing or understanding self-love and the balance and effort and ease. And I got that term because that's a big part of yoga practice, right? And so a lot of times mindfulness, meditation, anything mental gets better. Like, I don't want to be soft, or that's not for me. I want to be tough. Guy, girl, it doesn't matter. Mental side gets a bad rap for that. That's not it. It's just finding that balance of, you know, being too demanding, craving so much that it becomes unhealthy, wanting to be so great that it paralyzes you or like ruins all your relationships. Balance there and effort and ease, and that's where the mindfulness, meditation, even yoga comes into play. Because you're exactly right. It's about quality reps, and then also having the awareness, the self-awareness to understand, okay, when do I need to push myself here? When do I need to not do anything physical today and just do a 5 or 10 minute meditation, you know, or if I'm starting to get better in my meditation practice and I've been going 15, 20, 30 minutes, but I have a bad meditation that day or whatever it may be, to not be so judgmental, to just understand that, label that, you know, say it's called monkey mind, as you know, but if your mind's bouncing around on that day, say, okay, you know, monkey mind 1, or I was anxious, or me and my partner were feeling, and not judge yourself for that, just label that, be aware of that, and then move on from it. So I think it's both of those components, is reps and then understanding the effort and ease balance in that, so that it's a quality rep, but you're also not too cool, and still pushing yourself to get the most out of the mental training that you can.
Yeah, and I mean,
you're observing thoughts, you're feeling sensations, you're noticing heat, cold, noticing the breath. The breath is generally what most meditation practices are off of, but that's all that means is staying present, right? So one of my teachings is called the sacred pause, which is exactly what you're talking about, right? And all that means is I'm driving the ball down the court in the middle of the floor in transition, and I'm trying to make a move at the top of the key. I lose the ball, over, right? So most people's reaction, like what you just talked about, so our snap reaction is like foul the guy or make another second mistake that's going to compound that first mistake that we already made, right? Well, what the sacred pause is the difference between reacting, which you just did, and what's known as responding, which is just taking that deep breath. Sometimes if it's something that really frustrates the hell out of us, it takes 4 or 5 deep breaths. It's taking that one moment, that one deep breath, so that when I turn that ball over, instead of snap reacting and just fouling the hell out of somebody, I take that deep breath instantaneously. And this takes a lot of training, like you mentioned. You know, it's not something you can just flip a switch and do instinctively and repeatedly. It takes practice. But when I have that turnover, instead of fouling the guy right away, I take that deep breath, I sprint back on defense, I get the ball stopped in transition, you know, the defense floods in behind me, and so now we get a stop. And instead of, maybe it's my third foul in the first half because I snap reacted, I take that sacred pause, I use that mindfulness practice. Okay, I breathe, I sprint back, I get the ball stopped, we get a stop on defense, I get to stay in the game, we don't lose any momentum, and now we're right back where we were. So that sacred pause, that difference between reaction and responding thoughtfully, that's a huge part of mindfulness in general.
For sure. You know, I had a couple guys, you know, this year that I coached some Montenegrin guys. I don't know if you've ever coached a Montenegrin before, but let me tell you, they are wired for competitiveness. Like it's unbelievable. And I was like, I gotta find a way to get him to put, you know, to slow down and get them to breathe. Like it just rises like a tidal wave, you know, and sometimes they do well and control their emotions and I, you know, I'd always be like, breathe, stay, you know, like stay in this, you can't react every time a ref makes a bad call, like it's the end of the world, you know, or you're going to fight somebody, like, but there's, you know, it's interesting because I think some athletes play better when they feel emotion, you know, when they're tapped in. And we talked a little bit about that with my cousin too. And, you know, I was one of the athletes, I like to be in a peaceful state. I like to slow everything down. And for me, that was, I'd listen to Enya before games. I wouldn't listen to rap or drink Red Bull. If I did that, I'd have 10 turnovers, you know, and I was a mess. Like if my mental thought was all, everything's moving fast and doing this. And I think, so it's a different script for every person, what that routine looks like, what energy level they need to be at. But I think most importantly, you want to be able to be present, like you're saying, that mindfulness, and you got to work at it.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a good point, and this is what I was talking a little bit with the effort and ease, and this is where the DISC behavior assessments was really eye-opening for me. And so what DISC behavior assessments are, 4 letters, D, I, S, and C, are the 4 different behaviors that all of us have some combination of all 4. So the D behaviors, that alpha male that or female that you were just talking about, like a Draymond Green that just wants to win everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the real extreme version of that is a guy like Draymond that gets paralyzed by it sometime, that'll it controls them.
Like he kicks a dude in the groin, or he fouled. Like, what are you doing?
For game 6.
Yeah.
And now they lose. Yeah. So that's the high version of a D. So I's is the next behavior. And that's, these are the real high energy guys or girls. And it's usually the loud person. They're always talking. They're always joking. They like to be the center of attention. But again, that can be a negative for them, because if they're not getting that attention, if they're not getting that recognition, then they can struggle. So that's the balance that they always fight. They like to be loud. They like to be vocal, but sometimes they can talk too much, or if they're not getting the recognition they feel they deserve, then that can be the less successful behaviors for them. S is the really good teammates, right? So this is the one that wants to bring everybody along, wants to make everybody
I'm definitely an S.
And so that's great. The majority of the population, especially in athletics, they are S's. It's something like almost 50%. But again, the less positive or the less helpful behaviors that an S can display is they want so badly for everyone to do well that at times they can slow everybody down, because at some time, some point, people are going to have to fail, right? People are going to have to learn through their failures, learn through their mistakes. And that's hard for S's to let people fail or leave people behind. The other thing that can be less helpful for an S is they want so badly to help everyone that they'll take too much on their plate. And that can be overwhelming for them. They want so badly to help everybody that they'll try and do everything. And that can start to really weigh on their shoulders. The C, the last behavior, is a real analytical person. So this is someone that's going to be driven by statistics. A lot of times these are in the professional world, like accountants or engineers, people that only think by facts and figures. And if it's not presented to them in that light, then they don't really care. They're not driven off of emotion much at all. They're analytical people. So I explain all that because you're right. And that's where the effort and ease topic that I was talking about a little earlier comes into play, because everybody's motivated differently. Everyone communicates differently. Everyone's going to be driven differently. We have to be aware of that. That's why that understanding is so important as coaches and athletes both. But no matter which of those behaviors you are, having the awareness, first of all, but then also being able to integrate this mindfulness, this mental training, so that you're aware of it, and then also able to balance that and even modify it. You may need to modify your behavior. So say you're an S, you may need to be more of that D behavior sometimes and be more competitive and be more fiery. A D may need to be a better teammate every once in a while and not try and kill everyone all the time like Draymond does. Same with those I's and C's. Sometimes a C needs to be less analytical and not as fact driven and have some more fun with his teammates or be a little more competitive. So yeah, we all have to modify and be aware of those things. But no matter which of those behavior styles you are, being able to take practices like the sacred pause, being able to control your breathing, being able to integrate all these teachings, it's going to make you a better athlete no matter which styles you prefer.
Yeah. I usually try to keep it short. I know attention spans these days because people don't practice mindfulness. They're like mine. Only thing I'm watching right now is The Tiger King on Netflix. That's about the only thing that can keep my attention.
Through that too.
Did you? Yeah. Talk a little bit about your experience working with athletes and what you've found is really important for athletes to focus on when they're first starting off and this kind of stuff, because it's a new world for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I guess my advice for the younger levels, so youth to high school, even college, is understand that the highest level athletes are still going through all the stuff that you're going through. Don't think that it makes you soft or weak because you're having some of these experiences that we all have. So have that awareness, first of all, like you and I alluded to a little bit earlier. the highest level athletes are going through the exact same challenges that we're all going through. They may have more resources in place, or not discussing as much in the open light for a variety of reasons. Some of that stuff even gets into like contract negotiations and things like that a lot of the younger levels aren't even aware of. But understand that that's happening at even the highest levels. So don't let that frustrate you. Don't let that dissuade you from recognizing what your frustrations are, what your anxieties are, that you need to work on the mental side of your game too, because everybody's doing it. Jordan and his Bulls did yoga and meditation with Phil Jackson. Then it went on to Kobe and Shaq with Phil when he went to the Lakers, and now Steve Kerr and a lot of the Golden State guys integrated. And you're seeing LeBron do yoga. Miles Turner reshaped his body, lost like 20 pounds, transformed his career because of hot yoga. Kevin Love, as you talked about, he's a spokesman for Mind Sport. So everybody, I mean, Ricky Rubio's even been caught meditating on the bench some. The highest levels of guys are all doing it, and they all need it because we all have these thoughts, have these fears, have these frustrations, and we need the mental side. If you're hurt, if you're injured, you wouldn't try and like plan your rehab or treat your ankle that's sprained or fix your shoulder on your own. You'd go see a trainer, right? Well, the same's true with your mind. If you're having some stuff that's starting to become out of the norm, or even if you feel like you're in a good space, use some of these resources like Mind Sport, like what we're doing, because just like you wouldn't try and fix your body or fix your car on your own, the same's true with your mind. We all need some resources in place, some people to talk to, another perspective on things to keep us healthy, just like we wouldn't try and do any of that other stuff on our own.
That's so true, man. It's guidance, like I don't know how to fix your car, but I might be able to fix your jump shot. But like I'm not trying to fix my own alternator, because I know that I need guidance, and I think the mental stuff, people, they're in their head and they don't even realize it. Like you said, the monkey mind just up there chattering away. And when you start to get and look at it from an observer or a witness, and you can look at it and say, oh, I know what he's talking about now. That's like the beginning step for me, and
that's a great point. Because the first step, a lot of people get frustrated with mindfulness and meditation because they'll be like, oh, I'm not good at it, or my mind's wandering. That's actually the first step of being successful in mindfulness and meditation, is when you notice that you're wandering, that your mind's jumping, then that's the first step. You're becoming aware that your mind's hopping around, or that you're having these thoughts. And that's actually the first step of success, man. That's the first step of awareness, is when you can say, oh, they weren't my mind, or whatever.
Yeah. There goes my monologue.
You're already succeeding. Yeah.
I was just interesting because I think everybody's a little different, and I think everybody's got a different routine and a different awareness that they can have and start developing. So, man, I appreciate you being on Huffman Basketball and coming on to the life of overseas athletes. I interview a lot of those guys, so really, appreciate you helping these guys, the parents, kids, coaches. So
yeah, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, but if I can help anybody, any of your listeners or anybody that's watching this video, definitely reach out. So Mind Sport's an app. It's free to download. We've got a bunch of updates that'll be launching this spring, so be sure to download that, check it out. And then our social media platforms for Mind Sport in particular, it's actually at My Mind Sport, but Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then if anybody can message me individually, man, I've got, again, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Most of my handles on there are AM Ryan Stock, AM Ryan Stock. So anybody wants to message me on there, I'd be happy to take some time out and answer any questions anybody has, help any way that I can. So I'm here for your listeners and viewers as well.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. I'll probably be the first guy to call you. So
that sounds good.
This is Billy. I got a problem. Oh man. Well, again, thank you, and we'll be in touch, man, and with gratitude. Thanks for coming on the life.
Yeah, I love staying connected with like-minded people too. So it's been a pleasure for me as well, my man. I enjoyed it.